Hi there, welcome to part 2 of my class 31 repair. In part 1 you saw how I took it from non-running, cleaned it, lubricated, now it's going really nicely under DC. And it's important it works in DC, because if it doesn't run nicely in DC it won't do well in DCC either. So because I've shown it works alright in DC, I'm going to try and convert it to DCC. So first of all, let's remove the body shell. Reminder from part 1, you just unscrew the body screw, which is underneath the battery compartment, and you just lift the two parts apart. Keep the screw safe. And this is quite a simple locomotive to convert by the look of it, because the track contacts come up through this bogie. These two wires lead on to the motor, and as the main intention is to interrupt the supply from the track to the motor, it's quite easily done by disconnecting these two wires here, wiring in the decoder at this end, and the feed from the decoder to the motor at this end. One thing which they recommend is that the little suppressor capacitor, which is this one here, should be removed, because the suppression is taken care of within the decoder. So I'm just going to remove this, and I'll do that off camera. Right, that's the suppressor removed. I'm going to hold on to it in case I want to convert it back to DC for whatever reason. Disconnect the power from the track. Remembering that when I want this to work under DCC, that this is going to be the forward direction and this will be the reverse direction, so that when I'm wiring up my decoder, then I can figure it to do so. And if I get it wrong the first time, I can simply reverse the wires to the motor, and that should put it into the right direction. I'm just going to clean up the contacts in the pickup bogie by removing the excess solder there and there. The decoder I'm going to use is this one here, which you might recognize as a Hornby. The number is 8249 or something, 8429. It's the pretty basic 4-function decoder, and I actually got a job lot of these. I think I got 4 of them for £5. Obviously they've come out of another machine, so they're used, and they were sold as untested. And I tested them and I found that 3 out of the 4 worked fine. So that's cost me £1.67 per decoder. Not bad. For those of you who maybe aren't aware, there should be 9 wires on here, but obviously they've been removed, because these are the basic wires you need to get it working. And the colours are pretty well standard, that you've got 2 sets of colours. There's 2 wires that go to the pickups, and they are red and black, and the other 2 wires go to the motor, that's the orange and grey. And there's a little saying to help us remember which ones are which, and that is red and black from the track, orange and grey go the other way. Easy enough to remember. Okay, let me just trim these longer wires and I'll set it up and see if it works. Fitting the red and black. Apparently it doesn't really matter which way around these go, because coming off the track, it's actually an AC voltage. It's really a square wave, so it's varying all the time, and the decoder handles the processing, turning it from a kind of a variation voltage into a steady voltage. So it doesn't really matter which way around you wire these two. So I'm just going to put the red on there and the black in here. Tug, that's fine. Now it does matter which way around these go, so because the red, the orange and the grey determine which way the motor will work. At the moment I don't really know which way it is, so I'm just going to wire it in one way, and if the locomotive goes in the reverse direction we're expecting, then I simply reverse the orange and grey wires. So apply a little bit of tinning, and this is just a temporary arrangement. Connect one end of the motor to the grey lead and the other end of the motor to the orange lead. The extra lengths of cable which I cut off, don't throw them away, because you may need them for extending or putting in other decoders. So I'm going to keep them in my little box. Bring in my rolling board. I'm just going to stop the camera and clear a wee space here. I've set up my decoder, I wired it in, I should say, set up my rolling rod, and I've hooked it up to a Hornby Select. I got this because I didn't know how well I was going to do DCC. This was quite cheap, I think I got it for about £30 from eBay, but I kind of know it works. All of these decoders have been reset to the factory default, which is address 03, which is this number you see on display. And if I apply power, then you can see that the locomotive is responding very well. And although we can't know which direction it's going, you can see that it's turning one way. Change the direction and apply power, and you might have seen the flywheel moving inside. It is going in the opposite directions, and there it is, running very well, hardly any power at all. It's a nice little locomotive. All the decoders come with the address 03, so it's advisable that you always change it to another address. So this is a class 31, so I'm going to give it the address 31. It's only class 31 I have, so I'm not going to have a clash at the moment. Instructions tell us to hold down the select button for about 2 seconds. The display changes to LA, which stands for locomotive address. So I type in the new address I want, which is 31. There it is there. Press select again. The red light flashes a number of times, oh got it, and then it stabilizes at 31. So the locomotive should now respond as it did before. There it is. And if I change direction, oops, Yeah, there we go, sorry about that. Little glitch. And to show that I have in fact changed the decoder address, I shall put it back to 03, and when I apply power, no response. No response whatsoever in one direction or in the other direction. But when I go back to 31, there we are, and change direction again. Lovely. What I like about this particular locomotive is that there's a lot of room here in this little well for me to install the decoder. It's a plastic body, so I don't have to work with insulation, but I'm going to insulate the decoder anyway, to give it just protection, and also I'll trim the wires and make it sit and make it look nice and neat. When I've done that, we'll put it onto the track and we'll get it up and running. I've got my class 31 set up with the decoder on the track, but of course this is not a DCC track, it's a DC track, run off my Gauge Master twin track controllers. So I rigged up a temporary switch. I'll just zoom in. Let's see, this is a temporary arrangement. I've disconnected the power from the outside loop through here into the switch, which is the double pole, double throw on, off, off, on, off, on switch. So that's the DC selection which runs, and now I'm going to switch on to DCC, so I'm fed from my Hornby select controller. Oops. So I got it on 31, got the class 31 in the track, and that means I should be able to run my class 31. And you can see there it goes. And zoom out, try and catch it. Just around there, running nice and smooth. But I do have one little problem. You might remember earlier on I mentioned the fact that it's important to know which way is forward and which way is back. And as you can see, this has been set for it to run to the left when I go forward, but it's been moving to the right. So it's a simple case of taking the locomotive, and I'm going to switch these two connections in the orange and grey. That's my class 31 fitted with decoder very loosely, and I try to arrange it so that the decoder end, which is the pickup bogie, is the front. In DCC, front is a forward direction, which is this button here, and if I press this one, it's going in reverse. So if I press this button here, it should go forward. In other words, the decoder end should move forward. And when I wind it up, you can see that's exactly what happens. If I bring it to a stop, and this should bring it back. It's forward and reverse, the way you want it to go. Nothing to do with where, with the track direction. So if I turn the locomotive round, it will go forward according to this button and reverse according to that button. I said I bought these second hand, and I think that some of the values have been altered, because if I start this locomotive forward, it starts up slowly and accelerates, to a steady speed. I'll just bring it round a little bit. And then as it comes round again, we'll just see at the top of the screen coming round, coming from the left. This time I'll turn the power down. It doesn't stop, it decelerates. Obviously some of the values have been amended, so I'll have to find out which ones it is. And I'm on address 31 for my class 31. So I've got one runner running in DC. I've now got it running in DCC. So I'm going to allocate this address 31, and it's now a DCC fitted locomotive. I'm just going to get it all tidied up, and then we'll get the body case on, and that will be it running nicely. My track at the moment is now available to run as a DCC on the outside lane and DC on all the rest of it, which means I can't actually take the locomotive and switch it across into any of the stations, but that'll come later on. Okay, let me get it fixed up and we'll show her running in final glory in just a few minutes. Class 31 sitting there waiting. I've got a wheel rake of wagon set up, so hopefully that the Class 31 will pick up the rake of wagons nice and gently. And let's see if it's picked them up. And there we go. Just some open wagons and some tankers, just to give the 31 something to do. And as we pick it up around the back of the layout, you can see it's running really smoothly. Again, I'm only on 35% power. I don't want it to go too fast, and that looks pretty nice. So with that, I hope you enjoyed that transformation of the Class 31. First of all, from a non-runner in part 1, and then fitting a DCC chip here in part 2. The chip itself cost me less than £2. The Class 31 was about 15 or 16. So altogether for 20 quid I've got a nice little diesel. So I hope you liked that, hope you learned something, and if you'd like to comment favourably, subscribe if you haven't done so already, or even give me a couple of likes. So keep watching and take care everybody. Happy New Year, and bye for now.